just
Yeah, the last time that I had like a 30K win was the next week I won 175. And then I don't think I profited again for a year and a half.
till now.
Yeah.
And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Monday, July 31st. Going to be heading into August tomorrow. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by PrizePicks. Probably 9 games today, maybe 8 games. We'll get into that in a little bit. But first, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are below our bodies. Adam, what is up?
So this is a really weird slate because the most important game may or may not play.
Yeah, that's going to be a very, very big swing piece. We'll talk about it in a bit. Fingers crossed that that game does last until lock. I hope everybody ends up losing it a bit later today, and that is my path to victory. But we shall see. I'm excited to play some baseball. I didn't play anything on Saturday from a baseball perspective. I played a little bit yesterday. That was not what I was looking for. So we move on. Anything interesting from the trade deadline for you that you have seen or care about?
Orioles just not doing anything, which is fine. Like, for the most part, the trades that have been made, I don't look at them and be like, wow, why didn't the Orioles top that?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the return for Jordan Montgomery or Jordan Hicks. Those were each guys that I wanted. So there's the potential for me to be kind of annoyed with those. But yeah, I mean, like the Scherzer trade, they gave up, the Rangers gave up 55th best prospect, and it's like a 21-year-old, like massive ceiling, Acuna's brother. The trade just
Did you see Acuna's quote?
No.
Like my Acuna? I don't know if this is a real quote or not, but it was basically just like, Luis Angel is my brother, but now that he's there, like I'm his daddy or something along those lines. Like some sort of verbiage like that, right, where he changed it up, which I laughed at. I don't know if it's real or something. That was just like a phony thing that made it to Twitter, but either way, I laughed. So yeah. I don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, like the move today for Savali, I'm sure Savali's going to be good with Tampa Bay. If the Orioles traded like Kjerstad or Westberg for Savali, I would be beyond pissed. And that's like the equivalent of what Tampa did. So
Savali is not that's a great arm to have. You just want to have it. You don't want
right.
That's not a mid-season arm. That's a April 1st arm.
Right. Like I'm scared because like Michael Lorenzen has been rumored to Baltimore, and he's the guy that like it feels like they just end up getting as like a depth piece. So like I'm scared for like what is Michael Lorenzen going to cost? But I also think I do trust Baltimore's front office. I think whatever trade, if they do make a move, like they're not going to overpay, just overpay.
Malachar says Scherzer for nothing. Not nothing.
No, that was a pretty good trade for the Mets.
Yeah, I don't blame them at all.
Certainly has the potential, 5 years from now for it to be like, holy shit, the Mets got this guy for like a decent Max Scherzer.
Yeah. You ready to get into this?
Yep.
Here we go, folks. Yankees, 3.9 run implied total. Rays, 4.6. Johnny Brito now going for the Yankees. Tyler Glass now going for the Rays. I learned the Brito change as I was prepping for this show with Jordan. So shout out to Jordan Klein behind the virtual glass for this one. Brito unowned at 6,400 and probably should be. 25% ownership going to the $10,500 Tyler Glass now. What do we do here with Glass now? Because obviously the ceiling is massive, but not really a great spot here going up against the Yanks. And he's priced appropriately. Yeah,
I still think you play a good amount of him. The price tag is pretty much where it should be. It's in Yankee Stadium, which is the red flag here. It's a good home run park. Glasnow has had power issues this year, so being in this park, that is noteworthy. 193 expected ISO to lefties, 217 to righties. But even with Aaron Judge on the active roster, the Yankees still only have a 101 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. They strike out about 23% of the time. Judge being back obviously makes things dangerous, but from a talent standpoint, Glasnow is far and away the best pitcher on this slate. 34.8% K percentage is 5 points higher than Nick Pivetta, who has the second highest strikeout percentage. 2.6 xFIP is about 0.7 of a run better than Alex Cobb, who has the second best xFIP on the slate. So it's really just he's in Yankee Stadium, which sucks. But there is quality pitching on this slate in terms of talent. All of them have some sort of a red flag. Burns, tough strikeout matchup with Washington, and he's almost the same price as Glass now. Morton facing the Angels, Kirby facing the Red Sox, Pivetta, is cheap, so he's not in that same category. But he's also facing a team that has power. So there's you don't have that, ace facing Oakland in Oakland matchup on this slate, which, makes it easier to not be too concerned that Glass now is in Yankee Stadium.
I have a little bit. I'm not getting up to that 25%. It scares me a little, but I don't love the spot all that much. I'm nervous he gives up like one walk and then the dong comes from Judge and all of a sudden he's just not as interesting as he's going to be. But he could also just mow down 12 dudes and all of that, and he'll offset it pretty quickly. But we don't have to touch on Brito, I guess, unless you have any sort of like fun save salary take here, but I don't see it.
No, I don't see it either. Tough matchup, obviously, against the Rays. He's also not that cheap at 7,600. So basically, it changed the slate because Domingo Herman.
Wrong price. You're looking at FanDuel.
Yeah, never mind. That's still FanDuel pricing.
6,400.
Yeah, so still not super interesting, but definitely better than 76. He's not as good as Herman. Doesn't give you the same strikeout stuff. You have a 5 implied run total now for Tampa Bay. Left-handed hitters this year only striking out 12% of the time against Brito. 230 expected ISO. 19% K percentage against righties, 205 expected ISO. I liked Tampa Bay as a tournament stack earlier today. Certainly liked them even more now. They're up to 5th in top stack percentage. They are getting ownership, but they should be. So they look pretty good, and I'm not particularly interested in getting to Brito.
You can tell I've been eating like shit lately. The 2 most recent emails that I just received were from KFC and Arby's.
Jeez.
I immediately hit the junk button and get those away from me now. All right, let's talk bats here then. 4th in ownership. We got to go to Tampa if we're having this conversation because I don't get the sense that we're going to want a ton of the Yankees. But 5th in top stack, 12th in top value. How do you see Tampa against Brito?
I like them. I mentioned Brandon Lau in particular in my article earlier. He looks even better now. You have plenty of power elsewhere that's getting nice park upgrades. Yandy Diaz, Wander Franco, Arozarena, Raley, Paredes, Lowe, Siri. Like these guys all have power throughout this lineup. And now you're getting a pitcher in Brito that just doesn't miss bats in a stadium that plays up power. The Rays are more popular than they were earlier, but they certainly look good.
Straight Cash Homie says Angels trying hard to keep Ohtani. I don't think they're trying that hard. They're getting people in. They're making trades. I don't think any of those are something that Shohei Ohtani looks at and it's like, well, shit, I'm sticking around now.
Oh, I didn't realize what I was like. I was like, they don't have to try. They just literally don't trade him.
Yeah, I think probably long term more than anything else, but even still.
I mean, they've still got to be on the short list of places that he signs.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not like the Tigers are going to back up the Brinks truck and he's going to go.
Well, but I mean, like to the point here too, like if the Angels actually make the playoffs this year, it's a lot easier for Ohtani to just sign on and stay.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they're not going to do that, but like,
I mean, they easily could.
I mean, if we're going to talk about 20% being easily, then sure, but it's not like it's likely. It's highly unlikely. But no, I mean, like he's only ever signing for like what, one of 4 teams. Like even, in like a perfect world, there are only so many markets that he's going to one way or the other. Doesn't matter. Yankees bats here against Glass now. Is there anything you would want to get on the opposite side of?
Not really. I mean, obviously Aaron Judge is great and the tough matchup keeps his ownership down, but yeah, it's the most talented pitcher on the slate, so it's hard to make a case for the Yankees.
Joe Blanco. Yeah, he would stick around if they won the World Series. That's not happening. They have a 15.5% chance to simply make the playoffs. They're not going to win the World Series. But go buy that future ticket right now. Rank the game.
Last now, Tampa, Yankees, Brito.
Josh Gillum says Yankees give Ohtani $500 million. He ain't going to the Yankees.
I'll say it's the Dodgers. I think it's the Dodgers or the Angels. Like he wants to stay in LA. They can both afford to pay him and would be willing to pay him. The Yankees don't really even spend money like that anymore. They haven't in years. Like not saying they won't make an exception, but this isn't the mid 90s George Steinbrenner Yankees.
Seattle would make sense just because of the Asian links in
right. Yeah, Seattle.
baseball.
Yeah,
but I don't expect it.
I don't think they can do it like financially, but
they would be the other team like culturally. All right, let's go to game 3. Well, technically game 2. Nats Brewers, 3.5 run implied total for the Nats, 5 for the Brewers. Jake Irvin and Corbin Burns go in here.
Oh, sorry, one more thing. 500 mil ain't getting it done either.
No. Jake Irvin's unowned. Corbin Burns is 10,213% owned. You got to figure out why I'm not getting Corbin Burns here. What do you think about Burns?
I think he looks fine. He just doesn't project as well as Glasnow, and for good reason. I mean, Glasnow's strikeout percentage this year, nearly 35%. Burns coming in at 25%. Basically the same price tag. Decent matchup as far as Washington being a below average offense. Very difficult to strike out. That doesn't mean that Burns won't get strikeouts here. He's still a good strikeout pitcher. There were concerns earlier in the year that he was tipping pitches as well. So we have seen him pitch a bit better lately, and that's in line with the numbers we've seen from Burns in the past. So it is likely that, by the end of the season, his numbers across the board are better than they are right now. I don't mind getting him in tournaments, but basically a 2-to-1 ownership gap in favor of Glasnow. I think Glasnow should be more popular than Burns.
Why in the world am I not getting more of Burns? I'll figure that out later. Do we want to talk about Jake Irvin at all?
No. I mean, he's cheap. That's about it.
All right. Well, then let's talk bats. And there's only one side that we're actually talking about here. I think that's going to be the Brewers side. 3rd in top stack, 1st in value, and 2nd in ownership. How much do you want to target these Brewers bats who, outside of Christian Yelich, nobody's pulling any crazy ownership?
Yeah, they look good. I mean, Jake Irvin struggles with left-handed bats in particular, but he's not great against anybody. 237 expected ISO to lefties, 161 to righties, 357 expected WOBA to lefties. Certainly happy to get to Yelich. You're happy to get to Contreras and Adames. And the nice thing about them is that they cover the shortstop and catcher positions as well. 2 positions that you're typically not super excited to get one-offs at. Then you get bats that aren't great, but they're at least cheap. Carlos Santana hitting 3rd at 3,600. Sal Frelick hitting 4th at 3,800. Monasterio hitting 6th at 2,800. There is value here in addition to some nice pieces in Yelich, Adames, and Contreras. So they look like one of the better stacks tonight. They're 3rd in top stack percentage. They're 2nd in stack score because of how inexpensive they are. 2nd in top value percentage behind San Diego. So the Brewers look good, even though they're not the best offense overall. Josh Killen thinks he's not getting more than a 5-year deal.
I laughed too. I don't know if you heard me while you were talking, but no. I had the exact same like preposterous.
He's going to sign for like 15 years. And I'm fully aware he's 29. He's going to sign a 15-year deal.
Baseball.
It's going to be deferred. Right.
No one signs contracts like that unless it's like a 1-year player option out type joint contract.
This whole offseason, all we learned is that the new way MLB teams are working around salary constraints is by signing guys until they're 50 years old and deferring the money.
Yeah. We're doing the Bobby Bonilla to everybody now.
Right.
Do you want to go to any Nats bats?
Not particularly. I mean, in the sense that they're going to be low owned in a tournament, fine. But CJ Abrams at 4K looks okay. Ruiz looks okay. Burns, one of the better pitchers on the slate against one of the weaker offenses.
Alrighty. Rank the game, I guess.
Milwaukee, Burns, Washington, Irvin.
Alrighty. 2 up, 2 down. Nothing too crazy so far. I mean, the Brewers just stand out as a team that looks pretty good. We obviously got another game coming up. Well, we got 2 games coming up that are going to have to get us talking. But first, I need you guys to hit the like button. 550 viewers, 85 likes. I think we can get up over 100 if you guys hit that thumbs up. Schedule for the rest of the day. Simple. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next, taking you all the way up until 7 p.m. But now is the time that you guys should be trying to acquire some free money. And the way that I'm going to pitch here is the best way that I'll ever pitch. It's with BetMGM. If you're in a legal betting state and you've never signed up at BetMGM, here's the deal. As quick and as easy as it's going to be. Make a deposit. My recommendation, as much as you can possibly do, up to $1,000. Now, you are going to get a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum no matter what. But your first bet is the key bet of all of this because you will get up to $1,000 back on that first bet in bet credits if it loses. If you win, you don't got to worry about anything. You just move forward and you've got that money in your account. But if your first bet loses, whatever you put down, up, it's got to be at least $10, but whatever you put down, you'll get back in bet credits if you lose. So you could put $1,000 down on your first bet. And if it loses, you get it back in bet credits. There is no better sales pitch here. If you're going to look into sports betting, this is the best way to start off an account. Click the link in the description, sign up at BetMGM, get yourself a little bit of coverage on that first bet and 1 month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Legal age for gambling in most states is 21 or over. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Don't be using facts, Adam. Just because Bogart signed for it and he's older and only plays one of the main tenets of baseball doesn't mean it's going to just be like that.
Yeah. Can you imagine Shohei Ohtani's reaction if a team walked in and was like, yeah, so we're willing to offer you a 5-year deal?
Yeah. It's like, okay, is it $1.5 billion?
Right. Like, oh, you're going to pay me $1 billion and then let me hit free agency when I'm 34? Cool. They're like, no, we're just going to pay you, $500 million. He's like, yeah, no.
Yeah. He doesn't have to play the full 15 years, right? Like that's not the expectation for the Angels, that he signs a 15-year deal and exactly. He plays all 15 years.
Right.
This is an accounting contract.
Right. You're skirting the luxury tax by doing this.
Yeah.
And yeah, Joe Blanco's correct, but it's a totally different thing that we're talking about. Like, yes, smart teams also do that, buying out the arbitration eligible years, but that's
no one better than the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I mean, they buy them out by blackmailing people, clearly.
I mean, that's way more of a realistic answer than anything else.
It still is mind-blowing.
If you go and look at the Albies contract, I mean, I know the Acuna one is different, but that's because he has rocket shipped. The Albies one is the one that I look at and I just wonder what happened to him.
Yeah. 7 years, $35 million.
That's what I'm saying. His is just dumb.
He's making $5 million in arbitration this year.
Yeah.
Or no, sorry, he had already signed it, I guess. But he would have he's making $5 million this year. It gets up to a club option in 2026 for $7 million. He probably would have made that in arbitration, the $5 million.
What's his? Where is he? Okay, so he's at 5 years of service. He'd have been making more than that in year. That's right. That's a 1-win player. Right. Even in 5th year of arbitration, if you want to count that at 75 or 80%, it's still preposterous. Yeah, Acuna is underpaid, but I also didn't he became a very different thing.
Right, he was still expected to be a star. He just wasn't nobody. You don't project anybody to be this good.
Right, 8 for 100. He locked up generational wealth. And don't get me wrong, 35 million for Albies is really 10 to him at best. Congratulations, that's 10 million, but holy shit, man.
Taxes, agent fees, all of that. Yeah.
Nothing will beat that Albies contract. That's bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. That dude's been worth 17 and a half wins already in baseball. Good work, Atlanta.
Yeah.
No wonder they're good.
At least he's a free agent at 31, so he'll get another contract.
Dude, that's so long from now.
Oh, I know. 2029.
Oh, my God. All right, Blue Jays and your Orioles. 4.7 run implied total for the Jays. 4.3 for the Orioles. Chris Bassett and Kyle Gibson. 22% ownership coming into Bassett at 7,500. 7% coming into Gibson at 6,400. What do we do with Bassett here at 7,500 against your O's? Because that price tag works.
Yeah, it does. And it works even better now that Domingo Germán's not on the slate. It's a tough matchup for Bassett, given that his biggest issue this year has been left-handed power, and that's pretty much all that Baltimore's going to give you. Rutschman, Henderson, Santander, O'Hearn, the first 4 hitters in this lineup. Frazier hitting 6. Cowser obviously hasn't been hitting great since being promoted, but very small sample there. One of the better hitting prospects in baseball. He's hitting 8th from the left side. Mountcastle has been hitting. It seems like maybe, I know for Orioles fans, we were hoping that his vertigo was part of the reason that he wasn't hitting well this year, and he has been hitting since coming back. So hopefully, that continues. But one nice thing for Bassett here is that Toronto hasn't played up power to either side of the plate this year. 93 home run park factor, I believe, to left-handed hitters this year. So even though he has had those power issues in general with a 226 expected ISO, 262 actual ISO to lefties, he does have a 24% strikeout percentage against them. And this park does downplay power, whereas Camden Yards plays it up. So at 7,500 on a slate where every pitcher has some level of risk, and you did lose his direct competition in Domingo Germán, it does certainly make sense to be getting to Bassett.
What about your boy Kyle Gibson? 7% owned, 6,400 here against the Jays. Feels scary.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he's not a good strikeout pitcher. You're facing a team that doesn't have a lot of strikeouts. You're facing an offense that is good. If you're getting the Gibson here, it's just kind of he's 6% owned and he's cheap, so you land on him a little bit. That goes for, anybody in that price range, really.
Let's talk bats then. Which team do you prefer? They're basically the same ownership. They're basically the same top stack odds. Tell me why you prefer the Orioles.
226 expected ISO to lefties from Bassett is pretty nice. Gibson this year, 167 expected ISO to righties. You're getting the predominantly right-handed Toronto lineup. I think they're very similar stacks. You mentioned, their top stack percentages are similar, but they're also just both those middle of the road, high upside stacks where there's a lot of home run power in both of these lineups. So, at least, even though they're not super likely to succeed, they're in, okay spots, but nothing great. At least when they do well, it's frequently a lot of fantasy points.
I have both teams right now. I've got 27 Blue Jays stacks and 27 Orioles stacks. So I'm getting to both sides of this one from a power potential standpoint. I'm fine with it. Like, I'm happy to get to Orioles bats. I don't ever get these dudes right. Whenever I have them, they suck. Whenever I don't, they put up runs. So that's not a great sign for me. But on the Blue Jays side, so much power. I will take my chances every single day with Toronto bats. This is an offense game more than anything else, right?
I think it's a Bassett game more than anything else.
That's fair.
Like, I would say it's Bassett, one of the offenses, the other offense, Gibson.
Okay. Well, that was perfect because I was going to ask you to rank the game, and you did. So anything else you want to say for Jays and Orioles?
No, but I had forgotten what Austin Riley's contract was. Atlanta really...
Oh, yeah, that one's good too.
So Atlanta has to just actually be a really close-knit group for it not to destroy the locker room that Austin Riley's getting paid more than double what Ronald Acuna gets paid.
Yeah. And even still, that's a good deal.
It's a good deal, but 10 years, $212 million. That's at least Atlanta's at least taking some risk there. Acuna, it's what does he have to become to not just be a massive value?
4.7 wins above replacement 2 years ago, 5.5 last year, on pace for 4.5 to 5 again this year. That's good.
How many seasons?
But that one looks real.
How many seasons could Acuna miss on this contract and still end up being a value? I think he has he could retire now and we'll be yeah, that was a good deal.
Yeah, it's look, last time I was paying attention, cost of a win was $5 million or something along those lines. So, 3 years, 4 years of playing time without getting any major injuries. He could eat the final 4 or 5 years of that deal at this current pace, and it is a wash. Oh, it's crazy. We got to remember that we can't just look at the raw number and compare it to everything else. Got to remember what these are proportions of things. I wish they would just always do as a percentage of cap or revenue or something. Yeah. So you understood the reference points, because then it would never change. Anyway, my Atlanta Braves. Those salaries for the Braves today, not the same as their real salaries. Pretty soon Acuna is going to have a higher salary in DraftKings than he does in real life. 5.6 run implied total for the Braves, 4.1 for the Angels. Charlie Morton and Chase Silseth. Now we've had 3 pitching changes today. It's insane. 9,300.
Did you see the Cobb one already?
That's the third.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know.
And that one sucks, but that's neither here nor there. So I had some Cobb. 9,300 for Morton, 21% owned. I want to start here. I love Morton today.
Yeah, I think he looks pretty good. We did get a much better version of the Angels lineup than we thought we might this morning. Crone is in, Grichuk is in, Neto is back. The projected lineup this morning was all kinds of garbage, but
yes, it was.
Not only does that get better hitters into the lineup, it goes from being a lineup that had a ton of left-handed bats to one that's pretty balanced. It still skews lefty at the top with 4 lefties in the top 6, but 4 lefties, 5 lefties, 4 righties. No, 4 lefties, 5 righties in the lineup overall. Morton does have drastic reverse splits this year. 28.8% K percentage, 289 expected WOBA to lefties, 20.2% K percentage to righties, 373 expected WOBA. You're not looking at that saying, oh, wow, you can't play him because there's righties in this lineup, but certainly liked it a lot more when it was a bunch of bad left-handed hitters this morning. Outside of that, though, still a 3.9 implied run total. Morton is good, and I've said it a couple of times already. There's just not a perfect pitcher on this slate. The other thing that's nice about Morton, and the reason he's just going to get ownership, is that there's nothing really else in his price range. To get to Glasnow or Burns, you have to find $900 for Burns, $1,200 for Glasnow. You can save money and go to like George Kirby, but he's already getting 26% ownership. It's not like he's not low owned or anything like that. There's just not, he's kind of just on an island in terms of salary where you're going to get a lot of lineups where it's like, well, I can't afford to get to somebody that projects better, and he projects better than anybody cheaper than him.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the spot. I like the run total, like the game total is helping me here. And then just the price tag more than anything else is just equalizing everything. Any Silseth for you?
Not in this spot.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't really serious. I mean,
I think it was his last start that he kind of like came out of nowhere and just was nuts, but
you're not picking you're going to need a lot lower than 7K against the Braves.
Yeah. Yeah, it was July 19th. He started against the Yankees, 43.5% K percentage in that game.
Second in top stack, obviously. Dead last in value, obviously. 6th in ownership. I think this is the same story as it is basically every day. If you can find a way to wrangle 5 Braves, by all means, that's going to be a fantastic stack. They're expensive.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Silseth in the majors hasn't been bad at limiting power, at least to righties. 141 expected ISO since the start of last season to righties, 216 to lefties. This year it's 144 and 130 respectively in a limited sample, but tend to just, 1, it's a small sample, and then 2, it's the Braves. I don't really care what this guy's done against all of the hitters he's faced collectively when you're facing this lineup. It's just such a good lineup. 6 run implied total. Like you said, if you can get to them as 5-man stacks, great. Also grabbing them as 2-mans, 3-mans, 1-offs, it's all good. Acuna 16% owned, Albies 6%, Riley 5%. Everybody other than Acuna is a contrarian play with a massive ceiling. And then Acuna, obviously, not as low owned, but still a great play. Arguably the best, like the highest floor hitter there is. Obviously the floor for anybody is 0, but like between him being an elite hitter and stealing 51 bases, like if the guy just gets on base with nobody in front of him, you're getting a double in terms of more than a double in terms of fantasy points.
Who's better, Albies or Harris?
Albies.
It's tight
at least
for me.
I mean, like at the present moment, Albies.
It's close.
114 WRC plus for Albies this year, 105 for Harris.
Yeah, but Harris is also a 70 grade center fielder.
Oh, I thought we were talking. I just assumed we were talking kidding. It's a DFS show.
Oh, no. I mean, like to me, just in general. Like, I think they're pretty comparable.
Yeah, I certainly think they're comparable.
Josh Gillen wanted to be wrong again. He said Albies is much better than Harris. LOL. He's on one today, man. Just like trying to be so wrong every single time. It's crazy.
I mean, that at least is just like a take where, like, yeah, you're wrong, but whatever. It's not thinking Shohei Ohtani is going to somehow sign a 5-year deal.
Yeah. Sign it for minimum wage.
Right.
He's going to work for tips. 5-win season last year for Harris. Can you imagine? He's just good in the 9-hole. If they bumped him up, he'd fail completely. Angels bats against Morton. Is there something there with him owned?
Yes and no. Just because this slate's just one of those weird ones where, excluding Coors, like obviously you have San Diego against a good pitcher in Coors Field just standing out as the clear top stack if the weather cooperates. But you have mostly talented pitchers on this slate, or at least a lot of talented pitchers. And so you don't have that many spots where it's like, oh, this is a good offense against a bad pitcher. It makes it easier to justify getting to a team like the Angels, where if they do well, they're not likely to do well. But if they do, you're knocking off 20 to 25% of the field right there because they have Charlie Morton. And, as I was saying when we talked about Morton, this is a lineup that can do damage. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani's great, but you do have right-handed power, which Morton has struggled with. CJ Cron, Hunter Renfroe, those two in particular look good. Grichuk and Neto are fine. Moniak's having a good year. Again, he's a lefty and Morton's been better against lefties, but that's the point of saying that isn't to just not play good left-handed hitters against him. This is a dangerous lineup for the Angels.
Yeah, it feels really volatile today.
Yeah,
like
it feels like one of those spots.
I can see the Braves dominating, or there's like 4 or 5 home runs for the Angels, and it could be a real problem if anybody ended up on for them.
Right. It feels like one of those spots where it's very, very likely. Even the only reason that this isn't 100% true is the pricing. Like Ohtani's expensive, Cron's relatively expensive, Moniak's expensive, Morton is relatively expensive. But this is one of those spots where it's just so easy because of the volatility that you mentioned to see where one of Morton or the Angels is a huge piece of tonight's tournament winners.
Absolutely. Rank this game.
Factoring in salary, Morton, Braves, Angels, Silseth. Like, obviously, I would love to get more Braves, but
yeah, they're really starting to become like an actual one of the few spots that exist on most slates where you have to like think about how you get to them. It's not. We've lost like all of the real decision points for the most part because of salary. And the Braves are finally bringing one back where you have a different construction and you have to do something different to play them.
Right.
We don't really have that anymore. Like there's no context any longer.
Yeah, and like the bottom of the order makes it a little bit easier to get to those stacks, but it's still close to impossible to stack the top.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty rare that you don't have anybody below 4K.
Right.
And this game is not in like a traditional like bonkers hitters park.
Not in like
hitters
Mexico
park.
City.
Yeah. It's wild. I got nothing else here. Do you?
As a quick aside on the Braves, they are a little bit less expensive because Travis d'Arnaud is playing instead of Sean Murphy.
Okay. And they don't ever make changes either. That's the cool part. It must be fun to play for them and just be like, oh shit, I just play.
Right.
PrizePicks, folks, they are the sponsor of this video. You can go watch my PrizePicks video from earlier today where I gave you 6 plays on an 11-3 run, finally getting back, knocked the rust off of the All-Star break, and now we're here again. So make sure you're following along. Join the person in my comments who, once again, doesn't understand why picking these things individually is a way to evaluate everything. But for now, we're going to talk about PrizePicks. You can get up to $100 on your first deposit by clicking the link in the description, and 1 month of Stochastic plus Platinum. Perfect spot to go because this is a pick'em site. You're going to be taking up, you'll see pitcher strikeouts. You want more or less. Pitches thrown. But you can do that for baseball, soccer, League of Legends, the basketball tournament, tennis, MMA, boxing. So many different sports at PrizePicks. Market's huge. It's a fun time. You can make 25x your money if you go 6 of 6. That's what I'm shooting for tonight. I'm going to hit Adam with a couple of the plays that I had from earlier today. We're going to see where he ends up. Are you ready?
Yeah.
More or less than 7 fantasy points for Justin Turner. I know we haven't talked about him yet. He's got a matchup against George Kirby.
Less. For, I think, the first time in this game.
This is the number 1 less than for me today. That's going to be Justin Turner. I had him yesterday, and then he went yard in his final at bat, like in the 8th or 9th. Cost us a 5-in-1 day. All right. Cody Bellinger, more or less than 7 fantasy points against the lethal Andrew Abbott.
More.
All right. You're wrong on that one. That is less. If you watch the video, you'll get the goods. Final play. This one. We'll go, let's see, who's the most fun here? This one's an easy one. If the game plays, more or less than 9 fantasy points for Juan Soto.
More. Way.
That
more.
is
so many.
That more. Is a more. Guys, sign up at PrizePicks. It's fun. And I'm putting out a video 6 days a week. Cubs and Reds, 4.3 run implied total for the Cubbies, 4.1 for the Reds. Marcus Stroman going for Chicago. Andrew Abbott going for the Reds. 12% ownership to Stroman at 8,400. 4% ownership to Andrew Abbott at 10K. Should he be more owned?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, probably, but more than 3%. Like I also think he's going to be 7 or 8%. I don't necessarily buy that he's this low owned. But the thing with Abbott, it just makes him so weird is that right now he's at a price point where not only is he priced for the good strikeout stuff that he has, he's also priced for the run prevention skills he's shown, which are not sustainable at all. 96+% left on base percentage. That number has to come down. It's impossible to stay there. His ERA is like sub 2. His xFIP is fine. His ERA estimators are fine. 4.29 xFIP, 3.75 FIP. Even if you just take the FIP number, it's still nearly 2 runs better than his ERA. 222 batting average on balls in play. These are all just things that, like, they're not disputable. You can think Andrew Abbott's the best and he's going to be a star. You cannot argue that he's just going to maintain these numbers. It's impossible. He won't. But so that's why he doesn't project well for his salary and why he will be low owned is that, projection models are forward looking and his pricing is essentially backwards looking. So you're getting, hey, he's pitched this well. We're going to price him here when really he's, only that good. But one, those numbers don't have to turn around today. That's not how this works. And two, the strikeout stuff is real. And that's still the biggest thing in DFS. So it would be totally different. And you see this sometimes where you'll get a pitcher that strikes out like 20, 21% of hitters. He hasn't given up an earned run in 6 starts. He just somehow Bryce Elder, ends up being 9,500, 10K. And those guys are just like unplayable because it's like, how the hell do they pay this off? They have to like have a total anomaly of a game. Andrew Abbott has to just strike guys out and get lucky again on preventing runs, which when Andrew Abbott is going to strike guys out no matter what. That's what he does. So it's really just, does he give up runs today or not? And if not, he can easily still pay off 10K. So I do think he's a very interesting tournament play. But again, I think it's probably likely he ends up like, 6, 7, 8% owned instead of 2 or 3. And also the thing to keep in mind is Burns is only getting 13% at 10 too. So it's not like Abbott's the only low owned guy in this group you can get to. You can also go to Corbin Burns and accomplish not the same thing. I mean, obviously Burns is more popular, but still get a lower owned guy that, like lower owned upside play.
It's wild that the Reds have a hitter and a pitcher that are running hotter than the sun.
Yeah.
Like they've got the 2 guys that are like the biggest delta between. Okay, this is.
I mean, De La Cruz isn't really running that hot. He's just not as good as people think right now.
I mean, I think
like he's running hot, but he's not.
It's come down a bit.
What'd you say?
The extremity, like it was way more extreme a month ago.
Oh yeah, for sure. De La Cruz, like he's running kind of hot, but it's also just everything he does is so exciting and so eye catching that people also just attribute like his highlights to like what he's constantly doing, which isn't the case. Like if you ask like the average person that knows what WRC plus is and follows baseball, but like hasn't looked at Ellie De La Cruz's Fangraphs page in 2 weeks, they're gonna guess he has like a 120, 125 WRC plus when it's 104.
For sure. 12% on Stroman at 8,400 here.
Fine. If you get to some, sure. I am interested to see what the ownership does now that Alex Cobb is gone. He was 8K. He was getting 16% ownership. That turned into Junis, who is not going to pull anywhere close to what Alex Cobb was. So you'll probably see a little bit more ownership coming into Stroman. He was at 11% at the start of the show. I'm updating now to see if we've taken Cobb out yet, but we have. So now we have Stroman at 14%. So that came up a little bit. Nothing too crazy. It's an okay matchup. The Reds obviously have young talent, but they're also not great. 4.1, give or take, implied run total for the Reds. Wind blowing in a little bit in Wrigley. It's not hot today. Stroman's a good ground ball pitcher. He does a good job preventing runs. And we have seen his price tag come down a bit. He had been at kind of one of those unplayable prices where it's like you're paying $9,500 because he's good at preventing runs, but he doesn't get strikeouts. Now he's still good at preventing runs, but he's down to 8,400. So he's certainly playable. I would, if you have the salary, I would be trying to get the Morton, especially if the ownership in that lineup doesn't matter. George Kirby is getting about double the ownership, and I would say that he deserves it. But Stroman also perfectly fine at that salary.
Do you have interest in either side of this one from a bats perspective? I got a little bit of interest in the Reds if they're unowned, but nothing too crazy.
Nothing really. Like it's very difficult to make a strong case here. Marcus Stroman, even though he's not the best DFS pitcher, is very good at limiting power, doesn't give up much. Sub 100 expected ISO to lefties, only 129 to righties. Clearly you get the ceiling in somebody like De La Cruz, but you're absolutely paying for it. Same goes for somebody like Matt McClain. I think if you were going to an offense here, I'd be more inclined to get to the Cubs. Abbott has allowed a 190 expected ISO to righties this year. Again, the strikeout stuff's there, and he's allowed virtually no power to lefties. 36% K percentage and a sub 100 expected ISO to lefties in a very limited sample. Righties have gotten to him for a 171 ISO, 190 expected. So Nico Horner, Suzuki, Happ, Swanson, Morel, Gomes, Mancini, Madrigal. The only lefty in this lineup is Bellinger. Individually, Swanson, Morel, and Horner, I think, are where I would get to first. But you do have very reasonable prices on Suzuki and Happ.
Rank the game.
This one's tough.
Yeah.
They're all just kind of like, so I guess Stroman won just because there's not a lot of options in his price range, and you're just going to get some lineups where it's like, hey, I need an $8,400 pitcher, and Stroman's good enough. So
True.
I'll go Stroman 1. I think Abbott and the offenses are kind of just like the same thing, where they don't project all that well. You're not going to get to them very easily, but they are low owned, and if they do well, then you're looking at not a lot of competition at the top of the leaderboard.
5.1 run implied total for the Astros, 4.1 for the Guardians. JP France and Noah Syndergaard going here. 5% ownership to France at 7,100. No ownership to Syndergaard at 6K. Is it Syndergaard season for you?
It wasn't Syndergaard season for me when he was actually good.
Yeah. Is it JP France season by any chance against Cleveland? Doesn't
Pretty
seem
tough
like
sell
that
too.
one either.
Not a good strikeout pitcher in a brutal strikeout spot. The only positive I can say for France, and it's more a negative for Cleveland, is he has some of the weirdest reverse splits that I can remember ever seeing. 19% K percentage to lefties. That's obviously still not great, but sub 100 expected ISO, only a 262 expected WOBA to lefties. Righties have lit him up. 371 expected WOBA, 242 expected ISO. There is no right-handed power in this lineup. There are only 2 righties, period, in this lineup. 7,100, like, it sets up as a good run prevention spot. It's just, does this slate, for him to actually be a good play in DFS, it's either you need an anomaly in terms of strikeouts against a brutal strikeout team. That's probably not going to happen. Or it just is one of those slates where all the good strikeout pitchers give up 3 or 4 runs, and scoring, 15, 16 DraftKings points is helpful. France could certainly do that simply by not giving up runs to the Guardians.
How do you feel about Astros bats? 4th in top stack, 14th in top value, 3rd in ownership.
They look good. The lefties in particular, and I mean, it goes without saying, like Tucker and Alvarez are always going to be the best plays from the Astros. But Syndergaard, doesn't get strikeouts like he used to. He is still decent at limiting power, particularly to righties. 129 expected ISO to righties this year, only a 307 expected WOBA, 402 expected WOBA, 249 expected ISO to lefties. So Alvarez and Tucker really stand out as just great plays on this slate. The rest of Houston is basically a talent proposition. You're not, if you had a bunch of average right-handed hitters, you wouldn't really like the spot here against Syndergaard. But when those right-handed hitters are Altuve, Bregman in particular, Pena, Abreu, Diaz, Julks, like, there's still so much upside here that I'm certainly willing to get to them, especially when they come with Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker.
Sure. How do you feel about Cleveland here today? They are not ranked as, I'm a little higher on them from a top stack perspective. 7th in overall ownership, 9th in top stack. Do you like anything here for Cleveland?
Not really. I mean, I just mentioned how good France has been at limiting left-handed power. Jose Ramirez is always a good third base play. Josh Naylor has power. Jimenez is pretty much always a solid second base play, but only a 4.1 implied run total. That doesn't stand out at all. The splits from France are really concerning as far as the upside for Cleveland. So they have a good enough middle of the order where if you get to them a little bit, they're fine. But like when you talk about middle of the pack, middle of the road stacks on this slate, Cleveland, 3.5% chance of being the top stack. Baltimore, 4%. Toronto 4.5, Angels 4.4. So all very similar teams. It's a lot easier for me to see like how Toronto, the Angels, or Baltimore put up a tournament winning, like, oh shit, you needed this team game more so than Cleveland. Like, even if, let's say, all of those teams score 8 runs, it's so much easier to see like where the home runs are coming from in those other 3 lineups compared to where, Cleveland is probably, oh yeah, they got 6 straight singles. Somebody hit a bases loaded double. Then they got 4 more straight singles. Like, not the most useful stuff.
Rank the game.
Houston first, Syndergaard last. Probably Cleveland second and France third, but you could certainly flip them.
Okay. Well, now we got to do it. 4.9 run implied total for the Rockies, 6.7 for the Pods. Austin Gomber at 5K, Seth Lugo at 6,600. Before we talk about any of it, is it going to play?
I have no idea. Weather report looks the same as this morning right now. Seems like it's supposed to storm a lot during the game. I don't know. And I don't have a feel right now for how I even want to handle this. Lofty and I talked about it this morning. Alex, I know from doing shows with Alex in the past, and it was always a point that it wasn't my typical approach, but it was a really good point. My thought process as far as hitters go in games with weather concerns was always, well, you're going to get lower ownership, so it becomes appealing. Alex's counter was always, every team is a massive favorite to fail anyway. Why am I adding weather risk to this? And so today that's different to some extent because you are talking about in San Diego, the clear most likely offense to succeed. 24% chance of being the top stack, 17% projected ownership, 12% chance of being the top value stack is also the highest on the slate. So you have that, but there's still 75% not to be the top stack. So you have a 75% chance San Diego is not going to do what you want. And then there's a whatever percent chance this game's going to get rained out. It's still really, really, really unlikely that San Diego ends up being the winning team. And so it becomes, I kind of see it where, and again, I haven't decided how I'm going to play it. Based on me doing my Sims tool video earlier and just kind of looking at things, I expect I either have an absurd amount of San Diego bats or no San Diego bats because they are very clearly the top stack. Most of these other stacks are getting the correct ownership, if not too much ownership. So it creates a situation where, at least with the way things look right now, San Diego just ends up kind of like cycling back to the top where it's like, okay, well, they're popular. So let's look to the next team. It's like, well, they're not as popular, but they're also much less likely to succeed. So then we're just getting back to let's let 80% of the field play these other teams that are nowhere near as good tonight as San Diego. And I'm just going to load up on the clear best team and hope that they do come through. So, and then, and on top of that, you will get, if there are still weather concerns, you will get lower ownership than is being projected right now. So that's the argument for just jamming San Diego. Great matchup against Gomber, great park, good hitters, all of that. The counter is, what I was just saying. They're still 75+% not to do what you want them to do. You could just take them out of the player pool. They're still going to get ownership. Yeah. You can just take them out of your player pool, run your lineups with everybody else, and hope that San Diego doesn't score 40 runs.
Do you have anything you want to add for San Diego? Like, there's nothing else to be said. This is very clearly the top stack, and there is no competition for it.
Yeah, there's nothing to be said. Austin Gomber, 204 expected ISO to righties this year. 203, 351 expected WOBA. Tatis, Kim, Machado, Bogarts, Sanchez are all obviously going to look good. He's been even worse against lefties. 294 expected ISO with a 12% strikeout percentage. Juan Soto looks amazing. Cronenworth looks fine. The bottom of the order is cheap with Batten and Grisham. It's just very obviously the top stack. It's just a matter of assessing the weather and also your risk tolerance / just how you want to play it.
How do you want to handle the Rockies?
So they are much more in line with what I was just saying about they have like a 5% chance of being the top stack. I think they're a perfectly fine stack if the weather were to just cooperate. But they don't have a good matchup with Lugo. He's a good pitcher overall. About a 23% strikeout percentage, 23.5% strikeout percentage this year, 3.57 xFIP, 4.7 implied run total. They're in Coors Field. They don't have CJ Cron anymore. They don't have Randall Grichuk. So this lineup that was already bad is worse. I don't really want to deal with the weather on a 5% probability team. Also, Seth Lugo is, if the weather were to cooperate, actually playable at 6,600. He's projected for 9% ownership right now, but he's even riskier, at least with the current weather forecast, than the offenses are, because with the offenses, you at least get the outs where, it can storm for 2 hours, but if they're patient and the field holds up, they go hit. If you play 3 innings and then it storms for 2 hours, you just lost your pitcher.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty confident I'll be taking Lugo out of my player pool unless the rain just disappears. As far as the offenses go, I still haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do.
All righty. I'd say rank the game, but this is about as easy as it gets.
Yeah. Padres, Rockies, Lugo, probably some random reliever for the Rockies, and then Gomber.
Now we're going to the opposite game. 3.9 run implied total for the Mariners, 3.6 for the Red Sox. George Kirby and Nick Pivetta going here. 25% ownership coming into the $8,600 Kirby, 35% ownership coming into the $6,600 Pivetta. Eat shit, Nick Pivetta. Let's start with Kirby. How do you feel about that ownership in this spot against the Red Sox? Seems about right to me.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's one of the best parks in baseball in terms of run prevention. It's about league average for home runs. Kirby's reasonably priced at 8,600. He's not a great strikeout pitcher, but he's good. 22.5% K percentage, 3.6 xFIP. What's really nice about Kirby from a fantasy standpoint is that he is one of the most efficient pitchers in baseball on a per plate appearance standpoint. So while he's not a great strikeout pitcher, he does make up for some of that by being efficient, being able to work deeper into games. He's only walked 2.5% of hitters this year. So even though he's not anywhere near the top of this slate in terms of strikeout percentage, he actually has the second best strikeout minus walk percentage behind only Tyler Glasnow. So all of that's good for him. 3.5 implied run total for the Red Sox. The one, I said every pitcher on the slate has something wrong with him. The one concern here is that George Kirby's weakness this year is Boston's strength. 212 expected ISO, 329 expected WOBA to lefties, compared to a 126 expected ISO and 285 expected WOBA to righties. The WOBA numbers are fine. They're not great, but they're perfectly serviceable. But he's giving up power to lefties on top of that. The Red Sox are running out a lineup that has 5 lefties in the top 6, with Duran leading off, and then Yoshida 3, Devers 4, Tristan Casas, who has turned things around and been phenomenal, hitting 5th, and Alex Verdugo hitting 6th. So this does set up as a spot where if Kirby struggles, it's probably just going to be with the thing that he struggled with all season long.
Yeah. That's a scary, I don't want to say scary spot because the park really helps to mitigate some of the fear, but they are set up with his problems. What about Pivetta, who's sitting over there at 6,600, which just really isn't the correct price for this particular spot?
Yeah, he's kind of I think he's the easiest pitcher to get to on this slate. He's getting the most ownership at 35% on DraftKings. He's starting this game. So there are a couple negatives there. One, it means that he has to face Julio Rodriguez, Eugenio Suarez, possibly Cal Raleigh, his first time through. If you were having an opener out there for the first inning, then he can come in and face, let's say somebody got on base, you're going, Hernandez, France, Murphy to start things out. The other thing is that it does make it more difficult for him to get a win, because now to qualify, he has to go 5 innings, leave with his team having the lead and then them not relinquish it. Whereas if he comes in the second inning, his team just has to take the lead while he's pitching at some point. He can or cannot go 5. It doesn't matter. As long as he leaves with the lead, he can get the win. So those two things hurt. The slight positive from a fantasy standpoint is that it is slightly, bullish for his workload. You don't have to worry about the Red Sox playing games where they bring him in the 3rd or the 4th inning instead of the 2nd or the 3rd. You don't have to worry about them doing what the Giants have been doing recently, where they just lie about who's going to pitch, or at least their reporters lie about who's going to pitch. So, you do have that stuff. But overall, it's just this guy has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 29.5%. He's $6,600. He's priced like the same as Kyle Gibson and Johnny Brito. He's in a good pitcher's park. So all of that is great. The negative here is, again, his weakness is that he just gives up power to everybody. 201 expected ISO to righties, 178 to lefties. When he's not striking you out, he's giving up hard contact. And this Mariners team, they strike out a lot, and they also have a lot of power. 25% strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this year, but Julio Rodriguez, 188 expected ISO against righties, and then all of Suarez, Raleigh, Hernandez, all 3 of those guys have expected ISOs above 200. You don't have Mike Ford in this lineup, so that does weaken it a little bit. But I had this game in my article as the game of the day, partly because of the weather in Colorado, but also because the trend that we've been seeing with the Mariners still applies here, where you have 2 of the better pitching options on the slate, but you also have 2 high upside offenses that actually match up pretty well with the pitchers that they're facing. It's very likely to be something emerges from this game that is very, very useful.
You going to get to one of these offenses?
I have been in general, not like this specifically today, but we saw this for 2 series basically with the Twins and Mariners. We saw it with the Mariners and somebody else, and generally I have been.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything to key on here between Seattle and Boston. I think it's sort of interesting either way. George Kirby's obviously the better pitcher than Nick Pivetta, so it makes the Red Sox look a little bit worse. But at the same time, looking at it the other direction, And you're seeing it, 16th in top stacks, 17th in top stacks. It's just easier to get to Seattle because they're cheap. They're really, really cheap.
Right. And that's been the thing with Seattle. Like Boston is, again, they have a high ceiling, but they're relatively expensive. Seattle, it's just, you can build these lineups where you 5-man stack the Mariners, and the rest of your lineup is like, yeah, I'm good as long as the Mariners do well. Like, I have Ronald Acuna here. I have Matt Olson there. Like, you can do whatever you want with the rest of it. And the other thing, like, these are two of the least likely teams to offenses to succeed. They're second and third from the bottom in top stack percentage. It's just when they do succeed, they also negatively correlate with the field. So they're low owned, which is obviously great, but you're knocking off a 35% owned Pivetta or a 25% owned Kirby. So that's also a powerful tool. So when you're talking about the teams that aren't that likely to succeed, it's a lot more powerful to get to a team like this. And also they have power. So like when they succeed, it looks good. Than, a team where it's like, oh, they're not very good and they're going up against a 6% owned pitcher. So I'm not getting any extra leverage either.
Let's close this one out. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next, by the way. So be ready for that one, folks. Hit that like button if you haven't. We're almost up to 1,000 people. Giants and Diamondbacks. I assume the line is going to move a little bit here. Alex Cobb was the starter for the Giants. He is not. It's going to be Jacob Junis now. Ryan Nelson going for the Diamondbacks. I was getting to a ton of Cobb earlier. That's changed a bit. Do you want to get to Junis or Nelson?
No, I don't. Cobb was fine. Junis, not nearly as good as Cobb. Nelson, 6,200. You can throw him in that Kyle Gibson bucket where he's in a good pitcher's park. And that's the extent of good things I can say about Ryan Nelson.
Do you have interest in either one of the teams as a stack?
Both of them. So I'm curious to see if the line does move. Like it should. Junis is not as good as Cobb. But Arizona is a good offense. And, earlier today it was kind of like, well, you can get to them against Cobb and just hope for the best based on their talent. But now you're getting, Junis has had good strikeout stuff this year, 25% K percentage to lefties, 28% to righties. But he has a lot of 213 expected ISO to lefties going up against Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll in particular. But Perdomo will be hitting from the left side. So will McCarthy, so will Thomas. Jose Herrera is catching. I don't think we need to include him. But, point being, Arizona can certainly do damage here. And then on the other side, Ryan Nelson doesn't miss a lot of bats, does give up power to lefties with a 214 expected ISO. We don't have a Giants lineup yet, but you're likely to have Wade, Peterson, Conforto, Bailey, Sable. These guys can all do damage. And overall, against right-handed pitching this year, this park is kind of the opposite of Seattle. It's around league average for run park factor, for run scoring, but it's towards the bottom in home run park factor. But for a team that plays its home games there, so give or take half of your games, the Giants still have a 173 ISO against right-handed pitching. And that's not a park adjusted stat. That's just the number they put up. So there is a lot of power in this lineup.
There really is. Yeah, I'm happy. I've got a little bit of the Giants, and I'm totally fine with that, other than the fact that I feel like anytime I take them, they're going to pinch hit a whole team by the time that I get to the fifth inning. Do you want to rank this game?
I will go Giants, Diamondbacks, Junis, Nelson.
Favorite pitchers?
Pivetta, Glasnow, Kirby.
Favorite stacks?
San Diego, if you're playing that game. If you're not, then Tampa, Milwaukee, Houston. But again, this is a slate that I think is great for tournaments. Like if you're just getting to some of the, I like some of these mid-range stacks from an upside standpoint, the Angels, the Orioles, the Blue Jays.
Well, that'll do it, folks. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. Thanks to Jordan for producing. Thanks to Adam for just being here. Thanks to PrizePicks for being the sponsor. Thanks to the Sim Tool for being awesome. You can get that by clicking the link in the description. Going to be 180 bones. You're going to be pretty happy about it. New features hit the streets today. You can get up to 10,000 lineups now. Craziness. Come check it out. Good luck, everybody. Don't go anywhere. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. Peace.
too.
What happens when you press the button?
Then we start talking, I guess.
Oh, okay.
What is happening, everybody? It's Monday. I hope you all had a great weekend. I know I did, but I'm happy to be back on the grind here with my friend, Eric Lindquist. So as you guys come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to PrizePicks, who are sponsoring our show today. And if you guys haven't checked out PrizePicks yet, which Eric and I are going to be breaking down a little bit as we go here, you sign up using the link below. You are going to get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit and 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. So if you're looking to crush MLB DFS down the final stretch of the year, like a lot of our friends who have been adding us on Twitter. And by the way, it doesn't only have to be MLB. You can sign up for a platinum pass and get access to all the sports. Like Mike, I don't know what the rest of his name is, just Mike on Twitter. Mike sent us that he only played 20 lineups in UFC over the week. He came in first place in the big contest over on DraftKings. So he turned $500 into $27,000 over the weekend. So if you guys want to be cool like Mike, sign up at PrizePicks. Use the link we have below. 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. So access to all of the tools and data we have for every single sport, but of course, baseball, which we're going to be covering here. Eric, my friend, how was your weekend?
My weekend would have been better if Dustin Poirier hadn't been a complete no-show. That would have been an enjoyable experience. I had more Justin Gaethje, which is kind of ironic, but the one lineup that I needed, that I had all the Derek Lewis, everything set up. I had the Stone Cold Nuts going into that main event. And yeah, Justin Gaethje just or I guess he leg kicked. It was the knee from Derek Lewis, but he kicked my dreams to the side.
Yeah, I didn't. So I did very well in Rainmakers this week. I think I had a lineup that came in 3rd or 4th in the rare contest. I had another one that came in like 6th or 7th in the core contest. So it went well. I did not have the heart to go back and look to see what some of my better Dustin Poirier lineups would have been.
Don't do it.
I could have been the same scenario as you, but overall, it was a very enjoyable card. Had a lot of fun. I was at a family friend's college graduation party. We watched all the fights there. It was a good time, other than this one drunk guy who was yelling incorrect things about all of the fights the entire. He was very upset that Herb Dean, he thought, stopped the main event too early, which is maybe the most egregious take I'd heard of the entire night.
I thought Herb Dean knocked out Dustin Poirier again when it happened live. Like he came in, slid into home like he was Ronald Acuna. It was a great stoppage, but also I'm pretty sure the most under talked about thing, he definitely forearm shivered him right in the ribs when he fell.
Yes, he did.
Like there's no doubt about it.
He got in there, slid in, broke up the fight, but it was a good weekend, and I'm very excited to be breaking down some MLB DFS. And already right here, Saul Goodman in the chat saying Sean V GOAT. Oh, so I thought your allegiances were to Eric, and Eric being the GOAT. Sean V's the GOAT now?
Nah,
all right,
Sean. Saul and I, we're lovely now. We're gonna go play some golf here at some point in time and go enjoy ourselves. I'm going up to Pebble this week, so I'm not gonna see you all Wednesday till Sunday. I'm gonna be gone. Got to go hit a golf ball. Got to go play a member guest up, at a course nearby there. But we're gonna zip over to Pepperly, go have some Italian food over at Spanish Bay, go play Pebble, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's time to do work.
Saul Goodman confirmed, not Sean V's wife. Good information to have there. Charles Moran says, rest in peace, Paul Pee Wee Herman Rubens. Pee Wee Herman died?
Did he really? No way.
Pee Wee Herman from masturbating in the movie theater fame.
Oh, he is definitely dead. He was 70? 70?
R.I.P. I'm telling you, he was the first one to make public indecency cool. Eric has since followed in his footsteps. Eric, keep away from those public schools. But yeah, R.I.P. Pee Wee Herman, which, by the way, he really got an unfair rap for masturbating in a public theater because he was at a porno movie. Like, I get it. I get it that it's a bad look because he was doing a kid show at the time. But at the same time, too, is he not within his rights to go to a porno theater and, touch himself? Like, did he have to? Did he have to get his jizz all over the people sitting on the row in front of him? Perhaps not, but I don't think he did anything wrong. What do you think?
I'm just at work right now.
Me too. This is how I work. This is my process.
Hope my mom's watching. My mom will randomly click on videos. She'll see we're going live and I'll retweet stuff. And there's once in a while she's just like, did you really have to say the F word there, Eric? And I'm like, yeah, I did, because I work with fucking Greg Ehrenberg. Just shoot me.
No, I think that's a fair point too. But I mean, Pee Wee Herman, A real legend of the game. R.I.P. Pee Wee Herman. Charles Moran, thanks for that. Thanks for the info there. See if we have any other question. What's that? Jordan, just because one person died, you don't have to give a list of other people who've died recently. Who else is dead? Jordan, the bearer of bad news. We got baseball to talk about. It's a big slate. There's
wait, what? This guy did? He's a kid. He's like 25. What? Agnes Cloud. Yeah. Angus Cloud. He is legit dead. What a weird thing to just throw in there, Jordan Klein.
Jordan, who very, very rarely contributes to our shows, actually never contributes anything. Just hears us talking about people died, and he just wants us to know that he knows of other people who died. Real bummer, Jordan. That guy didn't even get arrested or anything for masturbating in a public theater. We don't care about him. Should we talk about MLB DFS as well?
Yeah, please.
We're only 15 minutes into the show at this point. So we got a Coors Field game today. A lot going on the baseball streets where there's weather, there's Coors Field. So let's just get like a kind of general overview first. What weather are you looking at outside of maybe needing to use an umbrella if you're sitting next to Pee Wee Herman in a public theater?
Oh my God. We're making fun of dead people now. That's where we're reaching to the depths. Just the stone cold.
Well, that's the saying though, right? Speak ill of the dead.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of thunder. There's a lot of lightning. There's a lot of problems in Colorado right now. It's the only thing that I'm concerned about. Washington, Yankees. I think there was like a little bit of something there. You got some wind coming in Chicago. For me, it's just all revolving around Colorado. So what I think you do, again, we're still an hour, 2.5 hours until first pitch of that game. I'm pretty positive that you're not going to know as much as I'm going to know until we're 10, 15 minutes before lock there. I could end up with a lot of San Diego, Colorado, or I could end up with a lot of Boston, Seattle, and Arizona and San Francisco. And I think you're able to just react to the weather. You're able to react to how other teams are doing in the early window of games. I'm playing 150 today, but I'm pretty sure that it's going to be an uncomfortable feeling if I'm sitting there 15, 20 minutes before lock of that San Diego, Colorado game, because they're just showing up so much for me right now. Everything that I do has San Diego and Colorado in it. And it's by far the worst weather, and it doesn't look good there in any way, shape, or form. But in the event that it somehow looks better, that it somehow gets better, I think you could get an under-owned San Diego side. I mean, San Diego's the side we definitely want. Not that going up against Seth Lugo is that big of a deal, but pretty positive that no CJ Crow, no Randall Grichuk. This is the worst-looking lineup you could ever imagine from Colorado. I want to play a ton of San Diego, just like everybody else. I think we're just on a wait-and-see approach unless you have something different to say.
It's so tough because, by the way, not only am I getting to the Padres, just by far my most rostered team, by a country mile. I had them in the last run I did here in 33% of my lineups, Padres stacks. And my most rostered pitcher, by the way, is actually Seth Lugo right now, who's projected for single-digit ownership. He's going up against that absolute dog shit Rockies line, which usually sucks and now sucks even more than usual because of the trade deadline and then moving pieces. You know, they just had so few viable bats in the line, but now you're taking somebody like CJ Cron out of the order, and nobody was playing Seth Lugo. Here's the issue, though. Like you said, the weather's just total crap. So
it's horrendous.
I don't really know exactly what I want to do with it right now. I built out two sets of lineups, one with the Coors Field game, one without the Coors Field game. Right now I have it in, but I don't feel great about it. If right now you had to make a declaration, either you are or aren't playing Coors Field, which way do you think you'd be more apt to go?
Play Coors Field.
That's where I'm at right now as well. Yeah. We'll see though. Maybe things will get worse. Maybe things get better later on. But as of right now, I'm willing to go with it. It's something that's going to make, a massive impact on the slate, clearly, because it's a Coors Field game. But we'll see as we get more weather information heading later on into the show. But we also have pitchers to talk about, and we've got most of the pitching options. Seth Lugo notwithstanding was a contrarian option that I had liked and still could end up playing if the weather's okay. of the pitchers that we know are going to be okay in decent enough weather conditions, we got pay up options on the slate like Corbin Burns at 10,200. We've got Tyler Glass now at 10,500. He's the chalky pay up option. Beyond that at pitcher, though, it's become a little bit of a weird slate because of pitchers like we had Griffin Canning was expected to be really popular. Scratch. Domingo Germán was supposed to be really popular. Scratch. So now we get to the spot where the pitching ownership is a little bit more spread out. Glass now most popular, project for 26.7% ownership. Is he your favorite pay up option, Eric, or is there somebody else you lean towards?
Nope. He's my favorite of the spend ups. I mean, I think Andrew Abbott, the ownership is extremely, extremely intriguing going up against Chicago, especially with wind blowing in. I'm a little bit surprised to see him at 3.2%. I'm going to have a lot more than that. But Tyler Glass now is still the calling card. His K prop is sitting at 8 pretty much everywhere that you look at across the industry right now. He's got a 34.8% K rate. You go through this Yankees lineup, it adds Aaron Judge, who can obviously inflict damage on a baseball. He can also strike out at a 28.8% clip. So between him, Rizzo, Stanton, LeMahieu, Bowers, Volpe, this Ben Rorvet fellow from God knows where playing catcher for them today. Higashioka playing the main side of that. Jose Trevino out for the season. He's going to strike out a ton. It's such a high upside spot that at a quarter of lineups, I'm fine being over that.
I was right around even with the field when I was running my lines before. I have a feeling, though, I'm going to be overweight to the field if I take Seth Lugo and the Padres out. Two reasons why that would up my exposure to Tyler Glass now pretty significantly. Number one is if I was high on Seth Lugo, I've got a lot of pitcher ownership that I have available in my lineups. Point two, though, is one of the reasons I'm a little bit cheaper at pitcher right now is to pay up for the Padres. If we're removing the Padres from the mix, then I've got a lot more flexibility to spend up at pitcher. So what I ultimately end up deciding to do with the Padres is going to really, really determine how much I get to of Tyler Glass now. Although as things stand right now, I think the ownership is perfectly warranted, as is cash games. Go ahead and play Tyler Glass now for sure. But if you were pivoting off of Glass now in tournaments to get to a lesser owned pay up option, who'd be the guy you go with?
Andrew Abbott. This is just like such a no-brainer. I know it's a guy that you and I have both kind of had highlighted, circled. I had issues with his xFIP earlier on in the season, and he's kind of just continued to just get better and better. I absolutely love the lefty stuff from him. I think Cincinnati, between Hunter Green, if he can get healthy ever, and then Nick Lodolo, I mean, they have an absolute core. Andrew Abbott, he'll give up some fly ball contact, 42.1% hard hit percentage. I'm still gonna be a little bit worried about the FIP and from time to time, but 286 xWOBA, 27.8% K rate, wind blowing in at Wrigley, and you get some strikeout bats in the middle of this thing. Suzuki, Happ. Sucks that Morel and Mancini are buried to the 7-8 hole, because those are always the guys that you kind of highlight and star, especially Morel when he moves up from time to time, even though he's kind of been subjugated to the 7 hole for the last however long. But there are definitely strikeouts available, and he's sub 5%, which is a little bit wild to me. I think that Corbin Burns, I know he's your dude, and there's positive leverage, but Washington, they don't strike out a ton against right-handed pitching. His K prop everywhere, 5.5, slight juice on the over of that. Andrew Abbott is just, I mean, he is jumping out in a big way to me at this ownership.
I'm going to go with my guy here, Corbin Burns, and a couple of things. Number one, I get the Nationals offense has been harder to strike out, and overall has been a little bit better than expected, especially as of late, where they've had players like CJ Abrams have really stepped up. But Heimer Candelario not in the lineup today. I do think it's going to be a slightly lessened lineup, especially because we're at the point of the year where veterans start to get traded, as we've been seeing throughout the day today. So a little bit of a weakened version of their lineup. Another thing, too, is Corbin Burns has pitched so much better as the season has gone on compared to the start of the year, where he really got off to a slow start. If you start to look at his splits and you look month by month, you are starting to look at slightly smaller sample sizes as you break it down by month, as opposed to just looking at the overall data. But I think there was just something wrong with Corbin Burns at the start of the year. I don't know if he was dealing with an underlying injury. Maybe it was something where he just got off to a slow start in spring training, wasn't totally ready for the start of the season. Because if you look at the first month of the year, his strikeout rate was only 19.7%, 4.08 FIP, 4.27 xFIP. And it's just gotten better and better as the year's gone on. So we're now in the second half of the year. We're post All-Star break, 1.43 FIP, 2.4 xFIP, strikeout rate 39.2%. we've seen this version of Corbin Burnes before, and I think he's just getting back into that form. So Corbin Burnes is going to be my favorite pay-up option. I know the matchup a little bit trickier than it might seem to be on paper, but I think Corbin Burnes is that guy again.
Yeah. So one thing that I've done, I'm not sure from a betting perspective, obviously I'm doing Lindy's Leans Likes Locks every single night over on the Odd Shopper channel. And if you guys want to check that out, go subscribe, go check out everything over there. But I have removed the first month out of almost every single starting pitcher sample size this season. It has made my life so much better. And once I did that, I just realized that there were some guys that showed up out of shape, that weren't ready to pitch every 30 seconds, that weren't equipped to handle it. It's something that once I did that, I feel like the sample size that I have now reflect a lot closer to the pitchers of 2022, 2021 who have equal sample sizes. It's something that I started to incorporate. I've talked about it a little bit on Lindy's Locks Update from time to time, but after I did that, it's amazing how stable some of these top pitchers, whether it's Max Scherzer, another guy who ran into some issues early on in the season, is kind of stabilized. Now, I don't think he was ever showing up out of shape or anything, but I think there was an adjustment period for pretty much every pitcher. I took the first 28 days of every single starter out of play for my model, and it's made my life a lot simpler.
Yeah, I think that makes a whole lot of sense, especially because of the rule change. Like you said, some guys might have not come in shape to be able to pitch the first, I forget exactly what the pitch clock is off the top of my head. 30 seconds, I think
whatever
is what
it is
said there, but whatever it is. Yeah, I agree. I do think that's made a change. There was an adjustment period, and maybe this year more than any other year, we should be discounting first month data. I think that's a pretty good thought process that you have there. And if you remove all of the numbers for the first half of the year for Corbin Burnes, the rest of the season just paints a totally different picture.
He's incredible.
Yeah, so Corbin Burnes, that's going to be my guy anyway. If we're looking to pivot on the high end, I'm going with Corbin Burnes instead of Tyler Glass now. Now, if we start to look at the mid-range of pitchers, which let's say is anywhere from 8K to 9,900 and below. So the pitcher who's most popular in this range is Charlie Morton, pitching against the Los Angeles Angels. He's projected for 23% ownership, so nothing crazy, but that is the guy who's picking up the most ownership in this range. George Kirby also right around there. And then we've got some other pitchers who are a little bit cheaper that are picking up ownership. But if you're playing one guy in the 8K to 9,900 range, who's the guy that you go to in this price range?
Yeah, it'll be Charlie Morton here. I'm not a George Kirby guy, even though shout out Elon University, your alma mater. I'll give him the love for that and that alone. Otherwise, I think he's pretty overrated and benefits big time from pitching in the best pitcher's ballpark in baseball for half of his starts. Charlie Morton, 24.3% K rate. He's another guy that had a pretty brutal first month of the season. It started to stabilize a little bit. He's still somebody who's got right around a 48% ground ball rate. I would like to see that come up. I would like to see him start to get more swings and misses, although he's older, 24.3%. I'm okay with that number. You add CJ Cron here and batting third right out of the gate, 22.3% K rate, but far more effective against lefties throughout his career. And then Randall Grichuk, who doesn't strike out a lot either. But Taylor Ward out of this lineup, who has a very low strikeout rate throughout this entire season as well. Pretty wild stuff to see the Los Angeles Angels just this lineup is just garbage outside of Ohtani. And then I do think Cron and Grichuk are going to be awesome against lefties. Charlie Morton, right-handedness to, I think, get by in this spot. So I think he's your safest option. Considering everybody is getting kind of equal ownership, Kirby, Bassett, I'm definitely leaning with him.
So I also now have a second set of lineups that I ran through the Sims tool. So this is 10,000 lineups if we take the Colorado-San Diego game out of my player pool. And this shows some of my other pitching exposure. And now I do get to Charlie Morton as my most rostered pitcher in this build of my lineup. So Charlie Morton, I was already liking before. And now if I take the Colorado game out, he pops up even more for me. So, we've also got in this price range, like you said, George Kirby, who's also picking up ownership. He's a little bit cheaper. But with that said, I do think the matchup against the Red Sox is a little bit tougher, especially because the Angels, I don't expect them to have, all their new guys in the lineup right away. Or sorry, never mind. He's not playing against the Angels. So never mind. Take that out of the mix. But anyway, George Kirby, somewhat difficult matchup against the Boston Red Sox. And also, Kirby is great stuff, but it hasn't generated strikeouts in the same way you might really think that it would. I do view there's more strikeout upside in Charlie Morton. We've seen more of a ceiling from as far as the strikeout stuff goes. So Morton is my guy in this price range as well. But now same question on the other side, Eric. If you're going contrarian in this price range, who's the pitcher you would go with?
It's not really a spot that I'm landing on all that much outside of Charlie Morton. But from 7,500 up, I am underweight to George Kirby. I'm underweight to Chris Bassett. I'm underweight to Marcus Stroman. I have 0 Jacob Junis. So, I mean, I guess the answer is nobody. The most I have next would be George Kirby, but I'm well underweight to him at 11%. Again, I have like almost nobody in this range. Everybody that I'm getting is that Seth Lugo, Nick Pivetta side of things. We'll go through Pivetta because, I mean, this guy's just driving me bonkers this year. But I think you can even make a case for some Ryan Nelson, as bad as that is. Even Jake Irvin against Milwaukee. But I'm just going and punting, or I am paying up for pitching. I have a lot of Andrew Abbott, a lot of Glasnow, a lot of Burns. I'm just paying up for pitching on this slate.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of weird, right? Because so Charlie Morton, I get to a good amount of on the high end, just talked about that. But then I think there's a lot of cheaper pitchers we could talk about that make sense, right? So there are high end pitchers I like, and Charlie Morton's kind of like close to that range, but there aren't like a whole lot of guys who are like mid-range type pitchers. Like the field is playing Marcus Stroman a little bit. He's projected for 14% ownership. I don't really like Marcus Stroman typically when he's picking up any kind of ownership because he doesn't really have the most strikeout upside in the world. Kind of difficult matchup here against the Cincinnati Reds. So I'm with you. I'm either going kind of all the way down or all the way up at pitcher. Not as much really in between. Super chat here from the Thunder, who's saying, I missed it. Are you guys taking the Coors game out? Undecided. I have 2 sets of lineups, one with the Coors game, one without it. It's tough. I'm not really sure. Part of if we're still going to see ownership going to the Coors game heading into lock, then I'm much more apt to take it out of my player pool.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a game time decision for me. It's so hard to know right now. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of really hone in on what I want from this early window of games. I definitely want Baltimore. I definitely want Atlanta. I definitely want Tampa Bay. And Houston is going to be a half hour before that game starts. And that's another team I've pretty much highlighted starred. So I've kind of got my core teams that I know I want to be stacking up and having a ton of exposure to in that early window. I'm going to just play it by ear as we get closer. It's hard for me to say over 2 hours away from first pitch for San Diego, Colorado to know exactly what that weather is going to look like. I'd hate to say something on the show that would sway you one way or another because I just don't know.
I promise that before the show ends, I'll tell you guys what the final iteration of my lineup looks like with that game in or out. But like Eric, it's very much a game time call for me. And I don't have a definitive opinion right now of what I'm going to do. Don't know.
I mean, if you guys want, I mean, it's one of those things where I'll be on Twitter. I'll be by my computer. I record, every single night. I'm not going anywhere. So like, if you want to know if I end up pulling it out of my player pool, I'm happy to go on Twitter and just update you and let you know, yep, gonna hit eject. Yep, gonna play it one way or the other. But right now it's just too far away.
I will say this. If you are totally risk adverse, you don't want to take any chances. If you're only playing one lineup, you don't want the game in. I don't have an issue with taking it. Like, I don't think you need to have it in your player pool.
Agreed. But I would really like it in my player pool if it's going to be under.
So the ideal scenario, ideal scenario is that everybody gets off it. I play the game, it plays, and everybody goes out, and the game's like 12-10, right? Or actually, I'd say the ideal scenario, 12-0, because I would probably be playing Seth Lugo in that scenario.
It's like Big Daddy. I have a 4, an 8, a 10, a jack, and a 9. I win.
So the other thing I would say also is that if you're deciding to leave the game in, there is a chance of rain popping up during the game. You don't have to play the bats and the pitchers. Let's Coors Field. A lot of people probably don't want to follow me with Seth Lugo anyway. But one thing you definitely do also is take Seth Lugo out of your player pool and then just play the bats. That's another way to do it, which I think lowers a little bit of risk, because I do think that while the game overall is risk, the pitchers and Seth Lugo in particular, more risky than the hitters, because we get rain in the middle of the game and then it delays and has to be played, later or something like that. So I do view the pitchers being more risky than the hitters.
Agreed.
Cheapy pitchers for today, Eric. What are you prioritizing on the low end? Nick Pivetta is projected for all of the ownership in the world. It's $6,600. We've been projected for 35% ownership, the most popular pitcher on the slate by a mile.
Yeah, Nick Pivetta, he is one of the more frustrating guys when it comes to baseball because you can see the four-seamer curve, that he is going to get strikeouts. He's that kind of a guy. And it's been a lot of bullpen that has revamped him. They've used him as an opener. That was that whole headache against the Braves where I was like, hey, you got to pay close attention. If he starts this game, he's going to have to face the Acuna, Albies, Riley combination 3 times in a successful start, and that doesn't feel very likely. They used him as an opener. He avoided the top 4, including Olsen, and then just mowed down a bunch of Braves, had a great outing there again. We saw against Oakland back-to-back outings. I kind of was just a wait-and-see approach there. I think it's all systems go. It's the best pitcher's park in baseball. The strikeout stuff has been there in some of these starts. You do kind of want to play around with some of the split leaderboard stuff when it comes to Nick Pivetta between being a starter and between being an opener of sorts, or, just being a bullpen arm, which he has been for a lot of the last 2 months for sure. But I like what we've seen from him of late. I think the strikeout stuff is undeniably decent. 29.4% new career high for him. It's going to come down a little bit as a starter as opposed to being in this bullpen type session, but 4.25 expected ERA. I don't find this Seattle lineup to be all that imposing. You got to get by the known suspects in Julio Rodriguez, Kyle Raleigh, Teoscar Hernandez, even nearly a 50% hard hit percentage, but Ty France been horrendous this season. Tom Murphy, Cade Marlowe, he's kind of a wait and see. Jose Caballero, he's got some speed, but overall, it's a really great spot to be investing for the first time in Nick Pivetta. The only problem is the field is absolutely there now.
Yeah, in a big way, like we were saying. I mean, he's projected for 35% ownership on DraftKings, and we'll touch on the FanDuel pitchers in a second as well here. But Nick Pivetta, I still think of him as the best cheap option on the slate. If you guys are just looking for salary savings, I'm slightly underweight to the field to him, but still, I think that he's very viable, especially in cash games today, if you absolutely need to save salary. But if you're going to be contrarian, I have a cheap pitching option that I absolutely hate that's showing up in about 15% of my lineups.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Jake Irvin.
Yes, sir. So
I've got 10% of him. That's why.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. So when it comes to Jake Irvin, it's a couple of things. Number one, I have found that certainly in my set of lineups where I've taken the Coors Field game out, it actually gets me to a bunch of the Braves. And what do you have to do to get to the Braves? You have to play some cheap pitchers. And if you don't only want to play the cheap pitcher in Nick Pivetta that's chalky today, you have to start looking elsewhere. And the options are all kind of trash. So Jake Irvin, at the very least, he is cheap, and he has shown some better strikeout ability as of late. If you look at his numbers overall for the year, they're terrible. 5.93 ERA, 7.45 expected ERA. These are things that we definitely don't. Oh, no. For some reason, I just realized Cole Irvin's stats are on my page, not Jake Irvin's. It's got the wrong Irvin.
So
anyway,
I would roster Cole Irvin against Milwaukee. Give me the lefty instead.
I should mention also, Jake Irvin's numbers are also equally terrible. 4.96 ERA, 5.07 expected ERA. The strikeout rate isn't great, but the matchup itself is not terrible outside of having to pitch around Christian Yelich, who returning to his MVP sort of forms, by the way. But if you look at the last couple of starts for Jake Irvin, maybe if I'm trying to stretch it, he's figured something out. 16 strikeouts over his last 2 starts in 12 2/3 innings. Pretty crazy that he had like the 2 best strikeout games of his entire career back to back. Is that something or is that nothing?
So I went on an absolute deep dive of him yesterday. It is wild how much better he was in the last couple. And I can tell you one thing, it's because of velocity. His four-seamer has gone from an average 94.2 miles per hour in his over the course of the entire sample size for the last season. He was routinely topping off at 96.5 to 97.3 miles per hour on the four-seamer in his last start. That is a very, very noticeable difference that we've seen. The curveball, it looks about the same to me, but if you go specifically through that Colorado Rockies outing, which again, is it that impressive that he racked up a ton of strikeouts against the Colorado Rockies? No, it's not. But the velocity itself is something that I kind of keyed in on yesterday. Thought it was an intriguing spot to maybe take an outside dart. I ended up passing on the game entirely, but from a DFS perspective, he was somebody that I kind of made a note of last night that I needed to make sure I had a couple shares of if I needed to like manually boost him or something of that regard. But batters swung at 52 of Verman's pitches. We actually saw some decent swinging strike rates out of him there. 38 made contact, again, 14 swinging strikes. That's pretty, or 15 swinging strikes over the course of that outing. That's a pretty hefty number. It tells you velocity up, curveball looked identical. I feel better about this stuff. And at the price tag, I think that's really the key part of it, is that he's a cheap guy who gives you some type of leverage off of everybody who's going to be playing Nick Pivetta.
You're getting, and also the Brewers, let's see, what are the Brewers currently projected for in terms of ownership? Because they were getting some earlier in the day. The Brewers are projected, the Brewers are projected for 12.3% ownership. This is the second most popular team on the entire slate. So to me, where you're really getting leverage with Jake Irvin is against the Brewers' chalky bat. So not a bad pivot off of Nick Pivetta, but then also you got Irvin himself projected for 2% ownership against an offense that admittedly sucks, projected for 12% ownership. They're good value stack. I think they're worth getting some exposure to, the Brewers stack for sure. But my preferred side is actually going to be on the Jake Irvin end, just because of the leverage you're getting on the other end. So playing both sides, but I'm going to be getting to more exposure to Jake Irvin than Milwaukee. Anything else that stands out to you on the low end of pitching?
I mean, Jake Irvin is about as disgusting as it gets. I mean, I can't think of anything worse. I do have a couple shares of Johnny Brito against Tampa Bay. It's really, really freaky. But it's just in the identical way that there's a lot of strikeouts available in the Yankees lineup. There's some strikeouts available, obviously, in the Tampa Bay one, too. Brandon Lau batting a third, north of 27%. You got Luke Raylu's been around 30% all season long. Josh Lau, Jose Siri, Christian Bethancourt there, three guys that really strike out at the tail end of this thing. I don't know what to make of what we're going to get out of Johnny Brito. It hasn't been pretty. He's only got a 16% K rate. And then you look at some of his stuff going back to the minors. It's just, it hasn't exactly been stellar, but he's definitely seen a spike at Scranton AAA. But I just roll the dice with a couple of these guys on the low end. I just am so against some of the chalk in the middle, in the dead set middle of the range. I'm just not a big fan of Chris Bassett at this ownership against a Baltimore team that I can get leverage with. Not a fan of George Kirby when I can get to all the Boston lefties for free. Going to be pretty easy for me to find leverage in that middle ground and then just going to the tail ends.
Yeah, I think that if we look at by the way, I totally agree with you. Chris Bassett, don't like him at his ownership. I'm underweight to the field on him. I have him in about 10% of my lineups right now when he's projected for 23% ownership. So underweight to the field on Chris Bassett. And no other cheap pitchers do I really have any kind of meaningful amount to. The only other one that I have
4% Ryan Nelson I have, if anybody cares.
I mean, Jake Irvin and Nick Pivetta are the only two right now that I have double-digit exposure to that are cheap.
Yep, same. Do you have any, Noah Syndergaard unplayable, Junis unplayable. I mean, Johnny Brito is the only guy that I was like thinking I could get to any of it, but like I have pitch count concerns for him too.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through my lineups right now and I'm just looking at the sim tool. If I have Brito, it's in like one lineup because I just scrolled through all my players who I have 2% or more of, and he wasn't in any of those lineups.
Okay. Just thought I would check.
Let's talk really quickly about the FanDuel side of things and just highlight any pitching differences that we have on FanDuel relative to DraftKings. And then Jordan, fire up the lineup generator tool because we'll look at some lineups in there for DraftKings and FanDuel. But looking at the FanDuel slate, Tyler Glasnow only 9% owned on FanDuel, massively different. His ownership for reasons I don't even understand because it's not like he's crazy expensive over on FanDuel. 10,600, very, very playable price point. I love getting Tyler Glasnow as a contrarian option at single-digit ownership on FanDuel, and I don't really see that much of a need to go cheap on FanDuel. One thing that's been really prominent about this year's pricing relative to other years, the pitching pricing just ends up being so flat. You get guys like the Nick Pivetta, JP Francis. Nick Pivetta is 8,000 on FanDuel. JP France is 8,700. Like those are just not nearly as appealing price points. So I just like paying up a pitcher on FanDuel. Morton is 21% owned. So he's the most popular pitcher over on FanDuel. My two favorite options on FanDuel, Tyler Glasnow at 9% ownership, Corbin Burns at 5% ownership.
Yeah, and I'm going to go Andrew Abbott at 1%. That seems fun to me. Ken, it's a Cubs team that can definitely lead to some strikeouts, and you're talking about 1% for him. Those are the three pitchers. I think those would be about the only three pitchers that I would really be jamming over there. Nick Pivetta, you don't need him nearly as much as you need him on DraftKings. I guess it's something that I haven't simmed for or taken a look at over in the Sims tool, but I think it's going to be pretty clear cut. I'll hand build out a couple of them here as we're closing out this show, and pretty positive those are the only three pitchers that'll show up in anything I do.
All right, let's build some lineups in the lineup generator, and I have a feeling it's going to give us just all of the Coors Field game. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what ends up happening with that. But Jordan, could you do us a favor and share this on screen so Eric and I could see it? And if you guys want to sign up for the lineup generator, the cheapest and easiest beginner-friendly tool that we have over at Stokastic.com, you sign up for the first time using the link we have below, less than $5 to get all this data here. It's going to build lineups for you. Take those lineups, you upload them directly into DraftKings and FanDuel, up to 20 of them. Something else you could do to get good use out of this tool is build a bunch of lineups and then look at some of the players you're getting the most exposure to. And if you want to hand build some lineups, you could build them around the core that you end up getting to here in the lineup generator. But go contrarian here, Jordan. I want to see if maybe we could get away from the Coors Field game. My hunch is that we are not going to be able to because our data just likes them so much, in particular the Padres side of the game. But either way, save some lineups. Let's see if, at the very least, we'll see what lineup we get the second most exposure to behind the Padres as a stack. I'll be interested to see that. Padres showing up. So far, I've seen at least one Padre in every lineup to this point.
It's such a freaking ridiculous spot today. It's
87% Padres, 27% Brewers, 13% Rockies, 13% Blue Jays. So the two teams that we're getting the most of that are not the Padres and are not the Rockies, it was the Brewers and, sorry, Jordan, go back to stack exposure for a second. The Brewers and the Blue Jays, and then some other teams mixed in there as well. I could say for myself, when I don't have the Astros in, the teams I'm getting to, like I said, I'm getting to Brewers. I have a little bit more of the Jake Irvin side. The Blue Jays, though, are actually the team I overall have the most exposure to right now.
Interesting. In the non-Coors set?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then I would be curious of this. If you have Coors in your Coors set, is Toronto number 2? Because I doubt it.
No, it's Padres 1, and then it's Rockies 2.
Oh god.
And then after that, every other team is like less than 5% owned. Like there's nothing else of significance that shows up.
This is going to be a horrific night.
I'm leaning towards taking it out, by the way, mainly because, and I think we should at least make some sort of declaration out of what we are planning to do, but mostly because in terms of the ownership, it's still expected to be very popular. So if it's going to have risk of being canceled and be popular, 17.4% ownership going to the Padres, 5.7%. So you got about a quarter of the field are playing the Coors Field game. My lean right now is to take it out, and that's just one way to be contrarian too.
Yep. I'm okay with it. I'm not in love with it, but it just sucks. It just sucks. I would love to play it today at reduced ownership, but again, I think you're probably looking at some of the weather there. I'm hoping we get an early postpone. Well, actually, no, I'm not hoping that. I'm hoping that I just take it out of my player pool. Everybody keeps it in. They find out after the fact that, it's canceled, but it's a hard spot. I mean, if you wanted to, you can also just take everything from San Diego, Colorado, try to turn it into as much Boston, Seattle, Arizona, San Francisco as possible. I mean, you have some expensive bats in Corbin Carroll and Julio Rodriguez. From the Boston side, Rafael Devers, you can get to any of those lefties. Like, you're going to probably end up leaving some sort of salary on the table, but it is what it is. Like, you're at least getting functioning bats there too. It's just that, I mean, every time I see 7 for an implied run total here for San Diego, it's just like, am I really going to just be pulling this out before the jump? But it looks that bad there right now.
Yep, that's what I'm doing. I just uploaded my set of lineups without that game. And if anything changes, I'll update you guys on Twitter. But my current plan of attack now that we are approaching lock is I took it out of my player pool, and it's not that I have a really strong lean on whether the game is going to play or not, especially because it's flood warnings, right? Like, who the hell knows what's going to end up happening with the weather, but it's more so that the game is iffy to play and the field is all still going there. So cross my fingers, hope I'm on the right side of the weather. It's the dumbest thing that happens in MLB DFS is you have to predict the weather. And not only predict the weather, but guess what the teams are going to do and how they're going to respond to the weather.
Dance, monkey, dance.
Yeah, I'm taking it out of my player pool. So if people want to know where I'm at, that's where I am. In terms of the players that we're getting the most of, it is all of the Padres here. So if you guys want to build Padres stacks, there they are. They are all of the best lineups that we have in our lineup generators who are Padres stacks. As far as pitchers go, we're getting to Tyler Glass now the most, followed by Charlie Morton, and then some Brewers in there as well. Most roster Brewers hitters, William Contreras. Then it's kind of hard for me to make out what that name is there because it's a little blurry on my screen.
Everything's so blurry.
And there we go. There we go. Keep scrolling down there, Jordan. I just want to see what other pitchers we have. Seth Lugo, who's not going to be in my player pool now. Then Kyle Gibson, George Kirby. And then I see JP France there at the bottom. All right, let's go and check out the FanDuel side of things now, Jordan. And we'll see what we're getting to over on FanDuel, which, by the way, Hunch, more Coors Field is going to be showing up in our lineups here. I should have actually said more specific because I just put weather Colorado, but I should really say weather Denver. Colorado is an entire state. Weather Denver as the command. Yeah, all right, let's see what's popping up here on FanDuel. Oh boy, I'm seeing all Padres again. Yeah, Fernando. Yeah, Padres stacks in bad. A lot. And then we've got Brewers 37%, Giants 16%. So other ones being mixed in there for sure. So if you guys are getting away from the Coors Field game, Brewers, Giants, Braves, those are other stacks we have double-digit exposure to over on FanDuel. And Sir Dwayne Moody wants to know, what are our home run calls for today for FanDuel? So, we're getting a little bit ahead of it here with the home run calls. But Eric, who are you picking at a homer today?
Let's see. Pull it up here. Where is my model? There you are, you beautiful thing. All right. Are we going super chalky or not? Because Yordan Alvarez is number one.
What? Hey, that works. You can go with Yordan Alvarez.
Yordan Alvarez.
You go with Yordan Alvarez. I think
Have
the other
fun,
day,
Noah Syndergaard.
Didn't we both hit our home run picks the other day?
We did. We're pretty good at this.
I had Matt Olson, and then you had
Matt Wallner, who just homers every day.
Yeah, I think you might have gone with Wallner. Let's see. What do I want to go with? I don't want to go with Acuna.
Matata.
I'm overweight to Acuna. I don't want to pick him, though. All right, I'll go with the catcher, William Contreras, who's showing up in a bunch of our lineups here, both FanDuel and DraftKings. I know we talked about Irvin being somebody that we like on the cheap end, but still, if we're talking about players who are likely to homer, still probably some of the hitters going up against Jake Irvin if we're just looking at the probability. So I'll go with William Contreras, not going with the most chalk Brewers hitter, which would be Christian Yelich, but I'll go with Contreras as my home run pick. As cool. For the rest of these lineups over here on FanDuel, we're getting to Charlie Morton the most. Jordan, can you scroll down a little bit? I want to see what else we've got there. Corbin Burns, love to see that. Marcus Stroman, don't like that quite as much, but yeah, overweight to Corbin Burns. I'll always back that. No issue with that whatsoever. By the way, in terms of my stacks, I also have the teams that I'm getting the most of. I'm just throwing it out overall. Braves, Blue Jays, Orioles. I really like whenever you can get the Braves at low ownership, sign me up, especially this year.
Yep. Yeah, I'm definitely playing a ton of the Braves. And Chase Silseth, I wanted a huge deep dive talking about him over on Twitter. If you guys want to check out Lindy's Locks update anytime, just kind of talk through why it is that it's really difficult to just get dropped from the moon onto Earth and have to face the Braves right out of the get-go here for his third start of the season. I like the stuff. The ground ball rate can be a little bit concerning. He's right around 58%. If you can find a way to be successful with that, sweet. But he does have a little bit of a home run problem. And, well, it could be awfully, awfully interesting, friends, to see how much power is in this Atlanta lineup and see how many moon balls he can end up giving up here in this spot. So, yeah, Chase Silseth, good luck to you, mate. You're going to need it. Love getting to the Braves.
So let's go ahead. And by the way, if anybody wants to sign up for our lineup generator tool, like I said, link below. It'll get you access for less than $5 when you check it out for the first time, which I think you want to do, especially if you want to make some money playing MLB DFS down the stretch of the season. But let's go ahead and talk about our stacks here overall. I mentioned the stacks I'm getting the most exposure to, and I really want to talk more about the Braves here because this Braves offense has been absurd this year, and they're only projected for 6% ownership. There's just not that many opportunities where you get to play this Braves team at modest ownership, and they are 6% right now over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, the Braves are a little bit higher at 8%, but still that makes them like the 5th, 6th most popular team of the day. So Braves low ownership. I know you're on the same page as me with Chase Silseth on the other side of the game. You got a ton of upside with the Braves and some cheap pitchers that, Jake Irvin, super contrarian, of relatively more reasonable play, and Nick Pivetta is going to be popular. But I think you can make that pitching combination go to a Brave stack, and it really does make some semblance of sense. In terms of the other chalky stacks here that we have on the slate, Eric, we do have the Houston Astros projected for 10% ownership against Noah Syndergaard. Your home run pick was Yordan Alvarez, which I could totally back. What are you going to be doing with the Houston Astros, who are the one chalky team that we have not yet talked about on this slate?
I'm going to play them. Specifically, Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker are two of my highest owned one-offs. I'm going to have tons and tons of those guys specifically. The rest of the lineup, actually, as 5-man stacks, not nearly as prevalent as what I was expecting them to, mainly because Baltimore against a chalky Chris Bassett is starting to pop up my board a little bit. Find that to be kind of an interesting spot for sure. But Jeremy Pena, he's having a down year, but it's still Noah Syndergaard. You can run on him. You can hit homers off of him. He has been broken all season long. I don't know why Cleveland went out of their way to go get him. I also like getting to the Cleveland side on the other side of this against JP France, even though the ERA might tell you, oh my God, he's so good. He's not very good. So I'm pretty sure that entire game is something that I'd be all right going completely nuts on. As you said, they're pretty popular, not nearly as popular as what I would expect them to if we knew that San Diego and Colorado is postponed right now. So I guess part of the news is going to be like, what is the timing of that news dropping? Because if you have Colorado and San Diego baked in for top stack score, that's one thing. But like you remove that game entirely, we're going to have a different top stack percentage sitting next to that of Houston. And I find 10% to be pretty palatable on this slate.
I'm going to do something that we've never done before.
Oh my God. What?
Jose Altuve is the stolen base pick of the day.
Oh, I have Acuna is the stolen base pick of the day. Plus 115 at BetMGM. That is a freebie against Chase Silseth.
You got Jose Altuve against Noah Syndergaard, who doesn't get people out anymore. He's never held hitters on base. All right, so now I have to one-up you. Jose Altuve stolen base in the first inning.
Okay, Acuna's going to get his in the first. Well, actually, no, Acuna might just hit a homer off Silseth, and then I'm fucked. But yeah, that's cool.
Jose Altuve.
I love the call. I'm very
Jose Altuve opens up the game with a single in the Astros half of the inning, and then he steals second base.
Yanner Diaz double dong.
Double dong.
Yanner Diaz goes yard twice. His right on right splits are pronounced things. It is a confirmed thing. It showed up at the AAA level. It's showing up at the big league level. Yanner Diaz going twice off one of them off Noah Syndergaard. I guess he'd have to go off somebody else too.
Now let's go ahead and look at some contrarian stacks, because over the course of the show, we've talked about Coors Field. We've talked about the popular stacks we're getting to. And, to some respect, the Atlanta Braves are a contrarian team. They're projected for 6% ownership. But are there any really, really low-owned teams, Eric, that you're getting to a good amount of exposure of?
Yeah, I'm getting to a lot of Baltimore. I really like Baltimore. Part of it is a chalky Chris Bassett on the one side of things, but he has a very, very prominent lefty problem. It just is. And there are some lefties that I'm pretty interested in getting to, specifically Anthony Santander, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman. These are all guys that I have double-digit ownership to specifically. Adam Frazier, no ownership. I've got him in 8% of lineups. I've got Jorge Mateo, Colton Cowser. I have a lot of Baltimore.
Yeah, I mentioned, so it's funny, actually, both those teams are two of my most rostered teams. If you guys remember, we were talking about stack exposures before with Atlanta in there. I have Toronto and Baltimore. These are also two teams that I'm getting to a good amount of exposure to, also teams I have more than 12% of. And it's for multiple reasons. Number one, these are two, offenses that have a lot of firepower, but I love the leverage that we're getting off of Chris Bassett. You'd said it before, Chris Bassett really popular today, 24% on. He is the pitcher I am most underweight to on the entire slate. And I think it's the same for you, correct?
Yes.
So if he's the pitcher I'm most underweight to, it makes sense I would have a lot of the other side of the game. And by the way, it's not like I went out of my way to boost the Toronto Blue to boost either side of this game due to the ownership. I just get to a lot of Baltimore because they're a good offense. And then also just our data is telling me less Chris Bassett, more of the Baltimore Orioles. So Orioles are one of the teams I get the most exposure to. Both sides of this game, I love it. 3% ownership to the Blue Jays, 3% ownership to the Orioles. I'm 4 or 5x the field on both these teams.
I want to amend one thing. I'm more underweight to George Kirby.
Let's see. Kirby. What percentage of lineups do I have him in? So I've got George Kirby in. I'm underweight to Kirby, but he's in 18% of my lineup. So I'm underweight, but nothing insane. Chris Bassett is hardly in any of my lineups.
That's chill. I can get behind that. He doesn't believe in advanced analytics. They don't matter.
I don't know if Bassett believes in anything. He shouldn't believe in his own abilities. We know that for sure.
That's a fact.
No good. I'm also fairly underweight to field on Marcus Stroman, by the way.
Who are you playing in this aluminum bat in all of the single entry stuff today?
Yeah. So my single entry stack is a Cleveland Guardians stack. And my pitchers are, this is a shit lineup. What are you going to do, though? It's what the data told me to do. You can't change what the data tells you.
Data's data, baby.
It's a rule. Yeah, I have a Guardian stack, and the pitchers are Jake Irvin and Kyle Gibson. How shitty is that?
That doesn't feel very good.
Hey, it is what it is, though. I might change that right now. I have a Brave stack here that I like quite a bit that I might change to.
Yeah, so we have the same thing. I have Cleveland with 2 Houston one-offs, and then I can play expensive pitching then too. So I mean, I'm not playing the filth you just said out loud for single entry, but I get it.
I mean, it's the lineup I have that projects the best for me for how I run my single entry.
So Toronto is your highest owned team for multi-entry, but then you're gonna play Gibson against him.
Yeah, it's pretty counterintuitive. I think
it's so baseball, though. I mean, that's what we're doing. Again, it's different when you're trying to win a tournament with, and I think it also depends if you're playing, because I'm not playing the 2-2-2 version of it. I'm playing the 44 and the 5, and I think I just have a little bit of a different strategy because of how many entries there are. I'm willing to get a little bit more contrarian in this regard. If you play in the 2-2-2 with Cleveland and then those two pitchers, there's nobody else who's going to have it. You're it.
All right, let's see, though. I think I'm more inclined to. One of my other best projected lineups is a Baltimore stack. In terms of my single entry run, I might just copy and paste and override it and throw my Baltimore lineup over that one.
Yeah, I have, Ryan O'Hearn. Oh, my God. I have so much Ryan O'Hearn now. 15% is a lot of Ryan O'Hearn.
Let's make that change. All right,
okay.
I'm going to go with Baltimore in single entry. My pitchers, by the way, in that lineup are Corbin Burnes and Jake Irvin.
That's better. I love that combination. Again, Jake Irvin, I made the case. I'm right there with you. He's somebody that I thought made some sense from a GPP perspective today. And yeah, I think, again, 9 and 7, the matchup's a little bit different, but it is what it is. Oh, Scherzer's already going to start on Thursday. That's beautiful. That's going to be fun.
All right. There we go. So I threw that one in instead. Yeah, I'm going to ride with, so I think something else too, which you and I talk about, like Chris Bassett, if he's 24% on large field tournaments, what's he going to be in single entry? 33%, 35%? Maybe it's a little high because the slate's big, but he'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 30%. So I do like the added leverage I'm likely getting in single entry there. So yeah, I'll go with that Baltimore lineup is, Corbin Burnes, Jake Irvin, 5-man Baltimore stack, and then it does have Acuna as a one-off in it as well.
I'm torn. There's just no, I'm gonna stick with it. I'm sticking with my it's been a long time since I got to play my Tucker Alvarez, which I'm pretty positive they ended up in like single entry for me every single slate last year. It feels good to have them back together. It just feels right, especially getting Noah Syndergaard. What a time to be alive.
So we've only got a couple minutes left to go here. And, we talked about contrarian stacks we like. The Orioles, the Blue Jays, both 3%. You and I are well overweight to the field on them. Are there any lower owned stacks you're making any kind of crazy stand on, like a team that's 1 or 2% owned or anything?
Not really. San Francisco is a little bit wonky. I mean, 4.4% ownership share now. The platoon stuff you can run into, although I just saw that they're going to add more platoon individuals getting Pollock, AJ Pollock. You can't play him against anything but lefties. Yeah. So they just basically got another Austin Slater, and he's not even good anymore. AJ Pollock. I think he might just be done, which is sad. But yeah, I mean, it could end up being something where the Cubs make sense against Abbott, but they're at 4.7% ownership share. There's nobody that's like completely unowned. I mean, Cincinnati, we know the upside they can have against anybody. Marcus Stroman, not my favorite DFS pitcher, but he's definitely been pretty darn good in terms of results this season. Wind blowing in at Wrigley, not my favorite spot, but we know what kind of high upside offense that is. We just saw it against the Dodgers. So you could play them blindly just about any slate where they're 2%.
Yeah, so if I'm looking at some of the ownership, I also have Cleveland Guardians. They're projected for 4% ownership. I have 8% Guardian stacks. So that's a team that I'm getting to. Is there any team that's picking up ownership that you're well underweight to?
Pull that up here as we're getting out of here. I am
only got like
Oh, okay. Sorry. I am way underweight. Well, obviously San Diego I have 0 of now. Colorado I have 0 of. So that helps in the underweight department. I'm underweight to Milwaukee, although I do have Carlos Santana. First base is basically Carlos Santana, Ryan Mountcastle, and Ryan O'Hearn. Like that, one of those three, please go completely nuts. I'm underweight to the Cubs at 4.7%. Although again, I can make the case for, hey, if Abbott gives up a couple long balls, you could run into it, but I think the wind mitigates some of that. I have almost 0 Arizona, so that's cool. Even though I do like Corbin Carroll when you're talking about better than plus 900 at Bet365. If anybody cares about such things, that's a good number to be getting. I guess Boston also, one more shout out. I'm overweight on Boston against George Kirby. A lot of that popular offense on the other side, but Atlanta, way over. Houston, way over. Feeling pretty good about this slate.
All right. It is time to call it a night because we are at lock now. If you guys have not done yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And don't forget, if you want the cheapest way to get access to all the tools and data we have at Stokastic.com for every single sport, just sign up at PrizePicks using the link we have below that is going to get you 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to a deposit bonus of $100. So go check out PrizePicks if you guys haven't done it already. Thank you very much for watching. Good luck with all your lineups tonight. See you back here tomorrow.